Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Unfortunately, no jokes from this team. We were trying to think about sustainability jokes that could rival the previous act. But I am really pleased to be here. I'm really pleased to be here with this panel. And I will let them introduce themselves here really quick so that we could dive into some important discussions about how to think about big events and what it takes to be and run sustainable events at this caliber and scale. So we'll start with Jake. Jake, do you mind just providing the audience here with a quick introduction?
Yeah, thanks. Hey everyone, Jake Rakelson. I lead sustainability for Disneyland. So we have a small group of folks who are focused across different elements of sustainability. So we take the corporate goals and we build a strategy and then we drive the implementation of all those initiatives.
Excellent. Becky?
Hi, I'm Becky Dale. I lead sustainability for LA28, which is the organizing committee for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games here in Los Angeles. I lead everything from kind of our blank page of what is our sustainability strategy to how do we implement that and get it done at a massive scale in 2028.
Thank you. And David?
Thanks. It's an honor and privilege to be here at the Music Sustainability Summit. To be on the stage with all of you and all of you in the audience. As a sustainability nerd, I love being around this audience because we can really dive deep. My name is David Beam. I'm the Vice President of Events and Experiences at the nonprofit Global Citizen. Many of you know us for our festivals and our live events. We're a nonprofit advocacy platform. We envision a world free from poverty, and we tackle the world's largest challenges, and we consider that by three kind of pillars. So one, climate action, then poverty and inequality. Our methodology is to, one of the streams is to have these massive, large-scale events that the only way into is by taking action. So through our app, you can take read quizzes, watch videos, and you earn and collect points. And from those points, you enter a lottery for a pair of tickets. We've taken our shows all over the world, and it's been wildly successful in our goals and our campaigns. We've had impact totaling over $49 billion of funds that have been paid out, and that's impacted the lives of 1.3 billion people.
Fantastic. Absolutely, round of applause, and hopefully we'll hear more both from also Becky and Jake here about the work that they've done. The first question really is to both of you, Jake and Becky. As you think about designing something for the scale of a Disney or an LA28, I think it would be incredibly insightful to just understand, for that type of scale, what are you looking for when you design, you think about infrastructure, and when you look to get the most bang for your buck when it comes to sustainability choices?
Happy to start. So I think what I'd say, well, for the audience, I think what you should know, we're fortunate to have a number of sustainability teams within the organization. There are the teams that are working on sort of building the new part of the business, so the large scale projects, and then there's our team, which is responsible for doing all of the sustainability work within the existing operation. So on the new builds, you get to do a lot of really cool stuff, experimentation, but the reality is that we only turn over a very small percentage of our building stock every year. And so if we're really going to make meaningful progress over time, it has to be both. So the way that I really like to think about, and the way that we've organized our team in terms of how do we deliver against our goals, and how do we make sure that we have the right planning horizon. We're obviously a 75-year-old operation, right? So we are really planning for the long term, and our assets tend to stick around for a long time. We like to sort of zoom out and think about, like, what are all of the opportunities that are available to us. And so that involves a lot of assessment, a lot of measurement. We have to do that on the front end. And then we have to match sort of the planning horizon against each of those things. So that gives us the ability to prioritize. Then we look at and say, okay, well now what is the mandate? Like we're not going to be able to do all of the things all at once. There's a lot of competing business priorities. And so once you kind of have that, you understand like what is the suite of solutions that are available to you? What is the mandate? What is the planning horizon for each of those? What is the return on investment? Then we can start looking at, okay, we're going to lean into a couple of things, but we're going to do them really well versus trying to do piecemeal and everything at once. So it's really whole systems thinking that is our bread and butter.
Are you thinking about it along the lines of also domains like energy, water, recycling as well? I mean, is that how you-
Totally, yeah, that's exactly right. So my team is responsible for all of those areas under the sustainability umbrella. So it's energy, water, waste, transport, materials. So all of those things. And again, there's so many individual things that you can do, and you can't do them all at once. And so how do you do the right things that sort of get bang for buck? And if you're talking about something like even a single initiative is a really big initiative for us, right? So like, for example, one of the things that we're working on is electrifying our vehicle fleet. We have hundreds of vehicles moving across our property. The planning horizon on that is long. You need infrastructure in place to be able to support the charging of all those vehicles. You need to make sure that the replacement vehicles perform in the way that they need to perform. Like each of those vehicles has its own use case. And so we need to figure all of that stuff out. And again, we want to make sure that what we're delivering to the operation is of high quality and can be sustained over a long period of time.
That's great. Becky, clearly with an Olympics Games that is looming right on the horizon, you probably confront probably different choices in terms of how you think about, especially time horizons. Would love to hear your take on how you're thinking about it for the games.
Yeah. So I think I'm basically the opposite of Jake in terms of time horizon because mine is quite short. We will operate at a massive scale for just a couple weeks in the summer of 2028, and then we will go away. So, long-term ROI isn't really the conversation. I think for us, and I think this can apply to other events as well, but I think the single most important decision we make is venue selection. We like to say the most sustainable venue is the one you don't have to build. And that's really been the anchor of why LA is hosting the Olympics and Paralympics and why we won this bid is that we have so many existing venues that we can utilize and end up having a much smaller construction footprint than historical Olympic Games. So we'll be the first games in modern times to build no new permanent venues, which is a big milestone just to prove that it can be done. And we will build temporary venues, but all of those will go up and come down in a couple of weeks. So very, very different situation. I think in terms of venue selection, like for us, the avoidance of building is a huge factor. Maybe that's not relevant to everyone if you're already using existing venues, but I think, the other core considerations are transportation. Where the venue is located has a huge impact of what your carbon footprint from transport is going to look like. If you're in the middle of a transit hub, great. That's how a lot of people will get there. If you're out in a suburb with no transit connections, it's going to look really different. And so that decision for a lot of events is probably the most significant one in terms of how you can reduce your emissions. Another big one is power. If you're at, and again, this is probably more relevant for temporary events, but if you're used to using diesel generators for an event and you find somewhere with a power hookup, that's going to have a huge impact versus a site that doesn't have that available. It's also probably going to save you money, but it's going to save you a lot of carbon.
Becky, just obviously there's a lot of inherent knowledge to the Olympics Committee and to the various cities that host that's transferred from one Olympics game to another. In what way does LA pose unique challenges and perhaps opportunities to do things differently beyond, as you said, to not set up any permanent structures?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure anyone who's been to both LA and Paris can say that they're quite different in a lot of ways. I mean, I think the most obvious example is around transportation, right? Paris had excellent public transit adoption in their games, and that makes all the sense in the world because they have one of the best metro systems in the world that's been around for decades. LA is not going to come up with that in 2 years. It just looks different. That doesn't mean we don't put a ton of effort into enhancing our public transit system, getting people who maybe don't normally take transit to try it and get to the venues that are accessible, building a what we call a games enhanced transit system, which is essentially bringing in around 1,700 additional transit buses from around the country to help move people around. So there are things that we can do to really improve upon kind of that business as usual case, but it does look fundamentally different in LA versus it does in Paris. On the flip side, given the scale of the entertainment industry in the U.S., there are things like the amount of available rental stock for all the different temporary infrastructure materials that we need to buy. There's a lot more available there, and so that's an advantage that we have that maybe they didn't have in Paris. So there are absolutely learnings that transfer, but you have to be really aware of different local environments and what your headwinds are and what your tailwinds are.
That's great. That's really insightful. David, moving on to you, would love to hear a little bit more about how you think about the life cycle of these events. You basically, I'm sure, already have a routine in place for setting up, conducting, tearing down. It's not obvious for somebody looking at it from the outside in to understand how you make some of those sustainability-related choices and embed them in each one of those, stages of that life cycle. So would love to hear a little bit more about that from you.
Yeah, thanks. I think where you're hearing permanent, semi-permanent, our events are inherently very temporary. So we come in, our event is 1 day, and we have about maybe 10 days to build, to have a rehearsal the day before, and then the show, and then to tear it down. So we're constantly looking and thinking, how can we make this the most sustainable? I just told you, we campaign on climate action. This is, we wear it on our sleeve. We have to have our audience show up, and they expect it at this point. They don't only expect to come and see incredible, international talent, which, help achieve the outcomes that we're able to achieve. These, $49 billion. We couldn't do that without the support of the artist community. That's almost expected from our audience, equally as much as showing up and having a world-class, safe, and highly sustainable event. So that's always at the forefront of our thinking. We're always considering this. And the way we achieve that is by working with local promoters and production companies. And so we try to hire as much as we can locally. We staff, and not just the lower levels of the, staffing, but literally, at the highest levels, the executive producers, the ones that are going to be running and know all the relationships in market, which actually can unlock a lot more sustainability. And so as a result of that, we look to use staging that's in the market, lighting, all the production, as much as possible, and then enhance it wherever we need. So that may show up in set or scenic and other, select items. So what we do, we place a lot of emphasis on the reuse part of things. So especially on the bespoke parts. So, for an example of that would be, we did Global Citizen Live. We had this in Paris. We had this beautiful set that was designed by Stewfish. We then used that for not only that year in Paris, but then reused it another 3 years in New York. And so when we design these things, we're thinking, how can we reuse, how can we make it look and feel differently? And so we're challenging our, all of our vendors to also think about this and say, what does year 2 look like? Because we're going to store this. We're not going to, just scrap it. We're going to extend that life cycle and divert, landfill waste. So we're constantly thinking of these things and always tinkering. In 2023, we had the ability with our partners at Coldplay and Show Power to bring in the battery system that they were using on tour. Well, as a result of that, that actually, this is again temporary power. As you guys know, this is like that's largely where a lot of the carbon footprint comes from. And so we're constantly trying to reduce that. We saw a massive reduction, over 80% of diesel fuel being used when we exchanged one 500 kilowatt generator with a 1,250 kilowatt battery system. And it was just incredible, reduced our overall greenhouse gas emissions by about 15%. But of course, I'd be remiss, it's an expensive venture as well. Our costs on that line item went up about 30%. In the second year, we were able to, really focus in, tinker, and see how we can keep these things off, maybe eliminate additional generators. And then from there, we were able to even cut that in half to 15% of the cost. It also opens up a significant sponsorship opportunity. And I want to, really bring that to light, because this, as professionals in sustainability, it's our job to implement these things. But I will tell you, partners love this. They really want to see, they want that shine and that glow of being the sustainability partner. And so it's really important to implement these types of things within the market.
I think that that's great. And David, you basically helped sort of set the lead for the next question, which I also want to direct to Becky and Jake here. And that is, we typically try to think about sustainability as a driver of also business value. And what we mean by that is, can it help the top line? Can it help reduce cost, as David just articulated? Can it help reduce risk in a way that you can quantify that is meaningful to the organization? And I'm just wondering, obviously, two different organizations, LA28 and Disney, but it would be great if you could articulate at least an example or two of where you're able to tie a sustainability objective to also business outcomes. Because I think that then it's an easier case to make to spend that capital, which is often necessary in order to enact that change.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that is the right question, and that is where our industry is moving towards in a big way. And I think that's something that we really try to focus on and have for a very long time, which is, I think if I really had to define our role, like what is it that we do, we drive and try to deliver high-performance systems. That's really what it's about. And when you can deliver a high-performance system, you're not only going to get cost advantages, you're going to get operational improvements, you're going to get regulatory readiness, you're going to get future-proofing, right? So there's a lot of reasons why you would do some of these things. But the advantage that I think that we have is that we have the ability, the operation needs to operate since 365, right? And we have the ability to look at a system, any discrete system as a whole, and think about, okay, how is it functioning today, and what can we do to improve it? The very easy examples, I definitely don't want to spend any time talking about lighting, but lighting is a system, and we have millions of them across the park. We can't just go easily and replace all of them, but it's something that we've been doing year over year, and they're high performance. They get return on investment. That's easy. We have other examples where, like, for example, we decided to do something about food waste. We look at how we were managing the food just in our overall environment and where that waste was going. We built a program around it, and because we approached it programmatically, by the time all the regulations came in, we were ready. It was done. So we've had a food scraps program for 11 years now, and so we find a lot of those advantages. The same thing with the fleet program. We were talking about it earlier, right? When the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule was passed, we had already figured out how to electrify our fleet. That doesn't mean that we were going to do it overnight. I mean, it was a long-term plan. It's a 15-year plan that we developed. But the advantage there, obviously, like you can do the math and you can find ROI. But there's also an advantage, for example, of intelligent deployment of capital when you're doing it on your own watch versus having to quickly deploy capital, particularly as it concerns infrastructure projects. So that's been a real advantage for us too. So we have tons of those examples through our operation, and again, I think that goes back to high performance systems and really like systems thinking around it, building programs, and sort of being very methodical in terms of how we implement.
Love that. Becky, any thoughts?
Yeah. So this is great, 'cause this is contrast between Jake and me. We operate in such different environments. So LA28 is a privately funded nonprofit. We have to raise all of the money to host the games. So fiscal responsibility is an extremely high priority for us. And so making the business case for sustainability is essential. I think the good news for us is that we found a number of areas where there is really strong alignment between the finances and sustainability and operations. The one I'll kind of pull the thread on that I mentioned a little bit before is around power. So, traditionally, mega events rely heavily on diesel generators, not a great option from a sustainability perspective. So we've been working closely with our energy team and the local utilities to identify opportunities to either shore up the reliability of the grid so we don't need the same amount of backup power, or to put in temporary power drops to directly displace diesel generators for primary power. It doesn't work in every single situation, but it works in a lot of them. And I think we've been pleasantly surprised that it has not been an uphill battle because it saves money. And so we don't have to go tell our energy team to do things that save them money. They're already incentivized to do that. Instead, with sustainability, we can really just amplify the existing business case for that work. And so that's been an area where we've found a lot of upside and a lot of benefit. I guess my caveat there is that the games are in 2028 and it is 2026. So none of our benefits are realized yet. We have to wait for 2028 for that.
I want to just add on to that. One of the things that we've incorporated is the use of a renewable diesel with a company that's based here in California because of the regulations and the incentives that are here with the credits. So a company called Neste, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Amazing product. It's a drop-in fuel. You can put it in any diesel generator, but it's burns 75% cleaner, which is incredible, right? The problem that I run into is that my event's in New York. So I have to bring that there, and it's at a cost, it's at a premium, I have to pay off the credits that California gives them. And, I'm also shipping it over there, so I have to run 2 semis that are running using that. But it's an incredible product. It helps keep all of our emissions down. But again, this is where we run into these regulation issues that other states haven't embraced. I was talking about a battery before. These regulations, because it's a new technology, it's always an issue when you introduce this into a new municipality. Fire departments are very hesitant about it. And so it's this is a really big challenge, I think, facing these large-scale mass events where it's just a temporary, for a short time. It's something I'm up against everywhere I go. Europe has this type of, drop-in fuel readily available everywhere. We did an event recently in this past November in the Amazon in Belém, Brazil, around COP30. They had 100% renewable diesel. No, it was not mixed with any fuel. And I was like, why can't I get this in New York? It's readily available in the Amazon, but it's not here. But that just shows you different markets are, are ready for new ideas and concepts. And I think that what we're up against, particularly within the US, is embracing that within different states. And, I'm trying to, get the fire department to understand, hey, this battery is just as safe than a diesel generator that has a lot of fuel in it from a safety perspective. So, it's education and really working with with the different municipalities so these short events, these large events that are, very short term, can also benefit from this, because obviously these events are inherently, unsustainable. But these measures make huge strides in reducing our footprint.
Those are fantastic examples. Just watching the clock here, I'm going to skip a couple of questions and just go to, what lessons might your organizations and the way you deal with sustainability in your setups, what lessons can you impart on the music industry? So, music industry has unique constraints. Each organization operates under constraints. Budgetary constraints, space constraints in the case of Disney, and thinking about stuff that's going to last for decades. Becky, you mentioned, you basically need to make sure that, you can set up something that's going to operate for 2 weeks and then just disappear. David, you basically have 10 days for a one-day show. You're all operating under very unique constraints, and I'm just wondering, what lessons might you take from the things that you deal with that you can share with the audience here, just so that they can think about that in the context of the music industry and some of the choices that they need to make? Maybe we start with you, Jake.
Yeah, sure. I think you hit it right on the head. I think it's very much context-driven. We don't do anything ad hoc. We really need to understand what is the sum of opportunities that are available to us. And I think when you know that, you can then start to make some of those choices. It's sort of, top-down thinking, bottom-up implementation. We do everything super methodically, and I think that gives us the ability to build credibility within our organization, because at the end of the day, we're very much constrained by, we're such a unique operation. We're very much constrained by everything has to work every day. And so we have to be able to deliver whatever solutions that we deliver into our system. They have to be quality solutions that are going to work day in and day out. And if we don't have the right testing up front, if we stick anybody with a bad asset, we may not get a second chance. So that is really critical for us. And so we do a lot of planning and testing. We put a lot of emphasis there because it has to perform in the way that the operation needs it to perform.
Is Disney a conservative organization in that sense?
Well, I think if I interpret conservative in this context, it is we're very reliability driven. So yes, right. Every asset that we own performs a different function. It's got to work. And so, we need to understand, where do we get the biggest bang for our buck? What things should we focus on? Which things should we let go? And how do we make sure that we've done enough planning on the front end that when we actually do make a change, that's not going to disrupt the operation, because we'll kind of lose the business credibility to be able to do that again.
That's super interesting. Becky, as you think about LA 28, do any of those decision criteria change for you as you think about planning for 2-week sprint?
Yeah, well, we're also very reliability focused. In no way is it possible for the lights to go out when Simone Biles is on the beam, or for the broadcast cut out to billions of worldwide viewers. So we also have that same extreme focus on reliability. We have something in common. I think what I would say for us, or what my advice would be for this group, just based on what we've seen with LA 28, is I think what we've learned, and this was one of the big learnings from Paris 2024, is be proactive, not reactive, and ask for what you want. And where we see that come up a lot is in our procurement process, which we're not operating yet, but we are procuring. Ask your suppliers to plan for the second life of everything you're buying up front. Because if you ask them to do it after the event, they're going to be like, see ya. And then you're stuck with, you know, all of this stuff that you have no idea what you're going to do with. If you put it into your, I don't know if everyone has an RFP process, but if you put it into your procurement process, if you ask those questions up front, you find out what they can do, you build it into the contract, and then you hold them to that contract, the size of the problem you have to deal with after the event goes from this to this. And, you know, unfortunately for us, this at the Olympic scale is still quite large. But it helps a lot, and you know, once you have your contract signed, you just don't have a lot of leverage, and so you wanna do this while you still have leverage.
And is procurement then a partner to you in this process, or do you feel like you're fighting two battles, one with procurement, one with the suppliers, and it's just...
Oh no, I mean, I think it's gonna be different in every organization. In our organization, procurement is a great partner to us. And we've also gone around kind of singing the gospel of this. Like, we're all starting to plan for what we call dissolution now, which is when we all go away. And our logistics team also understands that they don't want to be left holding the bag after the games when they have, you know, a very short period to clean up. So there are real operational and financial benefits to planning ahead. Again, like, getting rid of stuff is not free. And so even if a contract costs a little bit more, but it has that built in, that can save you money on the back end, and finance gets that. So I think if you make the case, you can build your allies internally for this.
That's fantastic. David?
Sure. So, you know, challenges and, you know, are just an opportunity, and that's how we always feel, especially at Global Citizen. We're tackling the world's biggest problems, and, you know, there's 700 million people living in extreme poverty. When we go into a new market, it's filled with hurdles to jump through, but we you know, see those as opportunities. Let me give you an example. We have a touring program called Move Africa. We started this a few years ago, you know, with, you know, the support of amazing artists like Kendrick Lamar and others who do 2 to 3 touring events throughout Africa. So we're trying to scale up and train people, because one of the, in terms of sustainability, equipment, labor you create a huge impact on sustainability. So what did we do in order to, like, you know, build that up? We started training people. We started, you know, encouraging the, you know, the purchase of production so that international artists can start touring in this new continent, this new market throughout, and have a real business model. As a result of that, you know, that was almost insurmountable. But as a result of that, this past year, it just happened. We did 3 dates with Doja Cat. We went from bringing in 40% of the production down to 100% of production being in market. And we cut the international staff that we would have to bring in down by 2/3. And so the touring team comes with that artist, but otherwise, you know, we were able to really create this amazing system for international artists to come and tour throughout Africa and give a new market an opportunity.
Guys, thank you so much. David, Becky, Jake, really appreciate this rich discussion and just sharing your insights with the team here. I think that this was fantastic. Really, really appreciate this, and thank you very much for this venue to host.